What's up, guys? It's TheDuckChris back for another Ramble. And today I thought I'd do something fun and come up with Nex drop table from scratch. So Nex is an upcoming boss and also an old boss. I'm going to state a couple assumptions right off the top, but overall this is completely from scratch based on, of course, some existing drop tables and modified, but I'll go through everything in order. I'll do the rares first, then the uncommon drops in the commons, and talk about everything. So my assumption is that you would do Nex in teams of 4 to 8 players, usually, and this would result in a 5 to 10 minute kill. So between 6 to 12 kills per hour. The core mechanic of the drop in my scenario is that the top 8 players, in terms of damage overall in the encounter, get a normal drop, and one unique is rolled, which is then distributed among those top 8 players. So you can do the boss with more than 8 players, but everyone who's not in the top 8 doesn't get a drop. So the pet and jar and elite clues would all be exactly the same, so they would only roll to the top 8 players. So basically you can still do a mass, you can still split drops among more than 8 players, but in terms of getting stuff in your name, 8 is going to be the maximum that you're really going to want to do it with. And of course, the smaller the team, then the more splits you can get. So let's get right into the rares. So in my scenario, you have a 1 in 50 chance every kill of hitting the drop table. So this is the rare drop table. Again, 1 in 50 chance, and there's only 1 roll per kill. So depending on your team size, it's going to be about between 4 to 8 hours on average. How does this stack up against normal stuff? Well, at something like Nightmare, where you would get maybe 15 kills an hour maximum, 3.5 minute kills, I think. Actually, I don't know if that's right. Maybe 10 kills, 10 to 12 kills. Which about the same. That was a 1 in 100. So it's about twice as common as a Nightmare drop in terms of hours. And there's only going to be technically 4 items on the drop table, or 5 items on the drop table. So 1 in 50 chance between 4 and 8 hours on average to hit the drop. So there's going to be five different slots on the rare table. And the first one is going to be the Zarite Vambraces. So we all want these. It's the Vambraces, the best in slot range gloves that we've wanted forever to match the other 2 best in slot gloves. And it's going to be a 3 out of 10 chance on this drop table. So this means about 107 hours to get it in your name. So not too bad, 100 hours for a new best in slot item. 1 second, just pulling up my numbers again. Yeah. And it's the most common drop on the drop table at a 3 out of 10. So the next 3 items are Torva. So we all want Torva, or at least, I do, and I think a lot of other people do. Best in slot melee armor that would come with Nex, and it comes in 3 pieces: the helm, the plate body, and the plate legs. I chose to include the helm because I think that our current best in slot helmets, being the Serp helm technically, and the face guard, are very easy to obtain. And while they're quite good already, I definitely think that we could use another helmet that's even better. And so it would motivate you to go for the true best in slot setup from a top tier boss, rather than getting it from a Slayer creature or from a mid-tier boss like Zulrah. So the helm, the plate, and the legs would all be a 2 out of 10 on the rare table. So about a 1 in 250 chance from every kill. And of course, you would want to get all 3 of them for the full set. And so so let me just pause for a second to talk about Torva. A lot of people have been discussing Torva in terms of non-degradable best in slot armor, but I think there's a great chance here to make it degradable and to make it charged not by coins, not by some kind of scale or anything like that, but with onyxes. Onyxes are one of the most common drops in terms of a prestigious boss drop. They drop from Zora, they drop from Skotizo, they drop from Tecton, rarely. And there's a bunch of other scenarios in which you can get an onyx, in addition to, of course, just getting it from a shop with Chaos Runes. So the value is pretty much fixed in terms of a minimum. But we have seen onyxes really go down a lot in the past little while. And a lot of people don't like that, myself included, so I think it would be a great opportunity here to use this armor as an onyx sink. And it doesn't have to be, a huge sink. You can make 100,000 charges or something per onyx, and that would last you a long time. So I think that would be a good idea. The last item I wanted to put on this drop table was the Zaros God Sword. But rather than drop it in the way that the other God Swords are dropped, I would want to put it in differently. So for those of you who've watched my Abyssal Bludgeon video, basically it talks about putting in items at in 3 parts. And that's how I'd want to do this here. Where are my feathers? So I would want to use the last slot to be a Zaros Godsword piece slot. And this would be a 1 in 10 on the drop table. So it would be the rarest item on the drop table. And if you hit the drop table 10 times, you're only going to get 1 Zaros Godsword piece. Obviously, this is really rare. For the time to get the full item, the whole Godsword, on the personal log, you'd be looking at a couple thousand kills. Well, not actually, but a couple thousand. You'd be looking at almost 1,000 hours, 960 hours. But the benefit is that it would be dupe protected. So once you get your first item from the Zaros Godsword table, the next 2 items you get are already decided from that table. So basically, whenever you roll the table, you're not going to get a piece that you've already gotten before, unless you already got the same amount of all pieces, in which case it starts over again. So while this would be a very rare item, it would take 960 hours on average to get on your log, and to finish the whole log, it would be a bit more forgiving than the current most rare items because it's dupe protected. So what do I want the Zaros Godsword to be? Well, I want the Zaros Godsword to be a best in slot melee slayer weapon. So basically I want it to be a halberd that has 2 tile range and hits everything in those 2 tiles for AoE damage on every hit. And this should be, I think, probably the 3 spaces in front of you. So you just have to group everything up into like a 6 tile 2x3 area in front of you, and then you can hit everything in that area for melee damage. So I would put this in 3 parts: the blade, the Godsword, Zaros Godsword blade, Zaros hilt, and Zaros crossguard. So 3 different parts, and you got to get all 3 of them to make the Godsword. So how does this stack up in terms of hours? I mentioned 960 hours. So let's break it down quickly. The hours for your team to see each item once would be around 40 hours in an 8-man group or 80 hours in a 4-man team. So within 100 hours, you're likely to see every item at least once. Obviously, it's a bit different when you have a big team because it's gonna, take a while for you to get that in your personal log. And this is, exceptionally important for Ironmans and stuff. But doesn't take that long. So for your personal log to receive each item once, and this is only with 1 Godsword piece, this is 320 hours. So this is not a ton of time. in this time, you would get 2 of each piece of Torva, 3 Vambrises, and 1 Godsword piece. That's pretty generous in 300 hours. And, it would set up so that Torva is the main reward, apart from the Vambrises. The Vambrises and Torva, I guess, together are the main reward. It's new armor, it's best in slot, and everyone can get it within not a ton of time. If you do a couple hours, maybe five hours, let's say even 3 hours. 3 hours a day with your team. It'll only take you a couple months to get the entire boss done. And at that point, maybe a new boss is coming out, or we're at least talking about a new boss. But that's not including the Godsword. If you want to get the entire log done, the full Godsword, it's going to take 960 hours. Again, 2 protected, so the variance is going to be a lot less. But overall, it will take a long time. So I think that's about where you would want to place the pet as well. Maybe a 1 in 1,000. So hang on. So I'm talking about hours right now. But we can also talk about kills, right? So the kills basically are going to be harder to talk about because it really depends like what your team size is in terms of like whether you're getting these items in your name or not. So that's why I went with hours to compare in the first place. Obviously, like if you do it in a 4-man team, you're going to have a lot less kills in those hours versus 8-man is about, going to be about double the kills. So it's hard to say really exactly what the kills are going to be, like your kill count is going to be. But in terms of kill count for the pet, you could do a similar scaling drop rate where every time you hit a unique, you have a chance to receive the pet. And that could be, it's worked for chambers where basically it's very easy to understand if you get a unique, then you're also having a roll for the pet. And every time that you get a unique, you get to be like, oh, it was a pet roll and I got it or I didn't get it. And a lot of people have said that this is bad, but I don't think it's necessarily bad because it lets you balance the pets and the unique in the same way. So that's one way you could do it. Obviously, you could just have everyone roll for pet at the same time, and just set the drop rate in a particular way. Maybe you want to incentivize 8-man teams, and so you set it at the kill count that would be required for 1,000 hours at 8-man, which would probably be something in the vein of, well, if it's 1,000 hours times 12, maybe a 12,000 kill count or something, which is crazy. So, maybe it could be a lot less than that. It could be, 5,000 would work, or something like that. So yeah, that's generally my vision for the rare items. So let's talk about the uncommons. So one of the big issues with Nightmare, and something that Fasani's has tried to fix a little bit, has been the fact that the uncommon rewards don't feel rewarding enough. So I've tried to fix that here with our premier uncommon drop, which is Zenyte Bolts E. So you have a 1 in 25 chance every drop of getting Zenyte Bolts E. You get 175 of them, just like you might get at a Corporeal Beast. And they alch for 12.5k each. So right off the bat, this is 2.1 mil in alchs, and that's not considering the fact that they are going to be very useful. So these bolts, the special effect, instantly restores 10% special attack energy and has a 10% chance of activating, which is the same as something you might be familiar with, such as Dragon Bolt, or such as Diamond Bolts, or a bunch of other bolts are very similar. So yeah, instantly restores 10% special attack energy, so for PKing it's definitely going to be very good. For PVM also, like, we use our specs a lot, so I'm sure there might be some use for that. But of course, if nothing else, they hold to go to alch price. And they are Dragon Bolts E, so one of the things that I would put in flavor-wise is that while Nex has been in this deep chamber She's been kept alive because they found some superior dragons, and they were like able to raise them as a food source, basically. So from those, that's where she can get some of the items that were previously exclusive to Vorkath, such as these Dragon Bolts E. Other uncommon drops: 2,000 Cannonballs, same as Corp. Dragon Arrows between 500 and 1,000. This is a very generous Dragon Arrow drop, and it's not super rare. Kind of similar to Chambers of Zarek, which is one of the only other sources for Dragon Arrows. Blood Runes, around 900 I think would be good, like a very generous Blood Rune drop. This would be anywhere from like 3 to 500k value. Death Runes, like 1,200. Again, a very generous Death Rune drop. Not super common, but uncommon drop. 4 Dragon Fruit Seeds, 5 Magic Seeds, 1 to 300 Dragon Dark Tips. Again, very generous drop. And an Uncut Onyx. So the Uncut Onyx I wanted to include because we talked a little bit about Torva requiring an Onyx. And that's not necessarily something that needs to be there, as I discussed. But if you do want Torva to take Onyxes, this would be a good thing to put on this table as well. So not rare, but not common. It's an uncommon drop. And as a reminder, the uncommons would roll for all of the top 8 players every kill. So if it's a 1 in 25 for Zenyte Dragon Bolts, and you have 8 players killing it every time, and so that's about 12 kills per hour, you'll see Zenyte Bolts about every other hour. Every 2 hours, you'll get a 2 mil drop for someone. And while that's not, 2 mil per 2 hours, it's not a ton. It's a lot to come from one specific uncommon drop. And I was hoping that something like that would keep people excited, even when maybe they're going a little bit dry for uniques. For commons, I took basically a lot of this stuff from the original next drop table. 10 Torstal Seeds, I think, would be really good. Everyone wants Torstal Seeds, and, this is a top tier boss, so I think it's a great seed. 375 Magic Logs noted. Magic Logs these days kind of outdated, but they still hold a good value due to alking, and 375 of them is definitely a lot. 10 Brews and 5 Sandfuse, so these would always be dropped together unnoted. Back in the day, Nex had a 10 Brew and 30 Restore drop, or 30 Brews and 10 Restores. This is basically the same drop, just changed to have the amounts cut a little lower, because we don't have summoning to pick up 40 different potions. And even though you have teammates, they might get the same drop. So I thought maybe a total of 15 would be good. Either 10 Brews and 5 Sandfuse, or 10 Sandfuse and 5 Brews, with an equal chance of either. And then the last 2 drops would be 10 Superior Dragon Bones, noted, and 20 Rune Bars, noted. So these are both pretty valuable drops. And overall, it's not a huge drop table. There's only, a handful of items on there. Let me count now, actually. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15 items between the uncommon and the commons. And then, of course, the rares, which would happen about once in 1 in 50. So that's basically the whole table. Ultimately, my design went for went for a decently common chance of getting a drop overall in teams, a priority on finishing the premier rewards, which were the Vambraces and the armor set, and then a stretch goal of completing the entire Godsword with dupe protection to make it a bit more achievable in doing so. Yeah, so overall, that's about it. I can show the whole drop table right now, so you can take a look. It's, sorry for the white background, black text. I know it's blinding, but overall, that's where it is. Let me know what you think. I think it's really fun to think of bosses like this and to come up with basically what it would be like overall in the numbers to face it, and then try to imagine how that would feel. Would it feel satisfying to see a drop every 50 kills, or would it, be not satisfying because you're like, well, even in a 4-man team, I have to do 200 kills on average just to get a single drop in my name. And then, it has to be 2,000 kills to get a Zaros Godsword piece. Ultimately, that sounds really crazy when you think about it, being like, 6,000 kills to get a full Godsword. But I don't know. It's a group boss. Maybe it should be that crazy. Maybe you could drop it down a little bit, if instead of between 4 and 8 hours, it was, maybe a 1 in 40. So it was between 3 and 7 hours. Then it would be instead, 40 times 10, so 400 times, times 3 to 12, 12K basically. Like, it's the kind of discussions you could have. Basically, it would be a 1 in 4,800 in a 4-man to finish a full Godsword. So, like, you could adjust these numbers forever. These are kind of the numbers I came up with. And yeah, they will look insane on release. But maybe that's what we need. We need something that's like, it's going to reward you fairly often with the normal loot, to give you that energy to push through to the end. Overall, I thought this was super fun. I'm definitely think more people should do this. Just come up with their own drop table and see what they can make out of it. And until next time, then that's been it. I might make another ramble soon on the item sync stuff, but everyone else is doing it right now, so I thought I'd just put out something a bit different, something that I'd wanted to do earlier in the week. But until then, leave a like, follow me on Twitter, leave a comment, and maybe check out one of the other rambles that I've uploaded recently to see why I like the Bludgeon so much, or any of the other ones. And until then, thanks for stopping by. Peace.